Well, hey, Experts class, sorry for posting this a little bit late today, but here's just a brief intro to the adaptations to aerobic and anaerobic training. And then we'll come together for a synchronous session on Wednesday to dive into this a little bit deeper. And then we'll continue with two more asynchronous classes on this material on Friday and Monday. Okay, so let's go ahead and just start out with just talking a little bit of, in general, kind of what we're talking about. Okay, so we're going to talk about lots of physiology. Okay, we're going to talk about how VO2 max changes chronically. We're going to talk about underneath that, right, how a VO2 difference changes, how stroke volume changes, how heart rate changes, those types of things. And then we'll talk about how things change in the muscle, right, like aerobic enzyme activity, muscle fiber type changes, things like that that are kind of detailed physiological and cellular changes. Okay, and so we'll spend a lot of time there for sure, like we always do. We'll spend a lot of time down here. And we'll do that first. And then secondly, after we do that, then we'll look at kind of how that all plays out up here for lactate threshold changes, economy of movement changes, and then really more importantly, performance VO2, right? That would be like our sustainable VO2. But then really even more so, what we care about more than that is our actual performance velocity or performance power. This would be if we're running, obviously. This would be biking, or something like swimming, okay, or rowing, right? So that's really what we care about here, is we care about how fast can they actually run, right? All of this stuff down here is cool, right? But if it doesn't translate to us knowing about how that actually speeds you up, then why does it matter, right? It doesn't matter. So we need to just kind of keep our focus there a little bit, keep our mindset in thinking that we're not just thinking about all these physiological things and it doesn't actually translate to anything meaningful. It does, right? It translates to increases in performance velocity, and that's what we care about. Okay. This slide is just kind of a deeper dive into the VO2 max part specifically, right? So really this part down here is just is all we have on this next slide. So this is just kind of expanded version of that bottom part there. And we're going to talk about all these factors, right? We have our cardiac output here. We have AVO2 difference here. We're going to talk about how AVO2 difference is affected, muscle blood flow is affected, how stroke volume changes, okay? And we'll spend time talking about all of those factors. All right, so let's talk a little bit about VO2 max here first, okay? So when we look at this graph, this was a fascinating study that was done all with brothers, okay? So we have monozygous brothers, which would be the identical twins. Those are the blue lines. We have just normal twins that are an identical twin, fraternal twins. Those are dizygous twins. And then we have non-twin brothers. These ones shouldn't differ too much in their genetics. They should be, they should have similar, they should share a similar amount of genetics with their brother. But the monozygous twins have the same genetics, right? And so what they did is they did a VO2 max test on brother A and brother B in each of these pairs of twins, okay? And each pair is represented by one dot, right? So if it's a blue dot, well, let's look at this one right here. Let's look at this red dot, okay? That red dot shows us that in a pair of dizygous twins, one brother's VO2 max, brother A, was 44, but brother B was only about 29. Okay, so that's how you read this graph. Okay, this is the line of identity. So if the closer the line, the closer the dot is to that line, then the closer they are to being the same, right? So any dot that falls right on that line means that the brothers have the exact same VO2 max, okay? So the thing to look at here is which color of dots tend to aggregate closer to that line, right? And I don't think it's any surprise. There's a lot of aggregation within all colors, but the closest one for sure is the blue dots, right? Those are the monozygous twins. What that tells us is that genetics plays a big role in VO2 max, okay? Probably somewhere in the high 70% of VO2 max is dictated by genetics. Okay, then what we're going to look at when we talk about VO2 max is we're going to look at, again, all of the factors that could potentially limit VO2 max. So start with the lungs, go into the heart, go into the peripheral blood flow, and then go into the actual using of oxygen and diffusing oxygen out of the blood in the active muscle metabolism. Okay, so we're going to start with the ventilation side first. Okay, so one thing to note about ventilation, just as a reminder, this is the relationship between ventilation and CO2, right? So what does this look like? It looks like a very linear relationship and a direct relationship, meaning when one goes up, the other one also goes up, right? So CO2 is the main driver of ventilation, right? That's the bottom line from this. CO2 is our main driver of ventilation. Okay, this I want to walk us through in class. Okay, so I'm going to have us do some interpretations on this in class, as well as answer this question. Okay, yeah, and so yeah, let me actually just skip ahead a couple slides too, because we'll spend some time on that in class. And yeah, I think that's actually all I want to do for this first one. We'll just go there. Okay, that's just a brief overview, super quick, and then we'll spend time diving into the heart and the lungs in class on Wednesday. All right, guys, see ya.